Hello, listeners! Before you dive into this bonus episode, a bit of a disclaimer. Alex had to go out of town on a business trip, and we had to improvise long-distance recording in a way we hadn't done before. So, you'll notice that the audio quality isn't up to our usual standards. The content, however, totally is, even though Alex was being a complete diva about his schedule and forced us to record at 1 in the morning. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this latest installment of The Summer of Travolta, and we promise we'll get a better microphone for future road trips. On with the show!
Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review, and don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of The Contrarians. My name is Alex. I'm joined by Julio, but not typically how I'm joined by Julio. We are on remote location. It is almost 1 in the morning. I am in Wichita Falls, Texas on a work assignment, and Julio is back in Austin. We are here to record a bonus episode. If I sound tired, it's because I am, but Julio, I'm going to trek through this.
I think that any other movie, maybe we wouldn't be able to do it, but this one, I think, will get us through.
Well, also because like fucking 80% of this movie is just music. We can just easily breeze through it, so that's the trick.
And then there's a song, and then there's another song.
Dude, fucking the last 30 minutes of the movie is one song.
but a great song, according to reports from anyone.
So, we are here to continue this the Summer of Travolta for our first bonus episode in this walk down the path of John Travolta. We are here to visit Hairspray, which upsettingly is from almost 12 years ago, from 2007. A remake of a 1988 John Waters film. There's a musical adapted after the same film as well, but 91%, a towering rating on Rotten Tomato.
Higher than I expected when we were doing the research.
Same. I did not expect it to be that high.
Yep. It's that's Travolta's career for you. Full of surprises. Every time that you think that you got him pegged, he puts on a female fatsuit.
30 pounds, as well as 4 hours worth of facial prosthetics. So, plenty of people like this movie.
Craftsmanship. So let's go with the fresh tomatoes. Starting with John Moore from the Denver Post, who says Hairspray is an infectious aerosol comedy with nearly every hair in place. Then Alan Jones from Radio Times says, if any movie musical could threaten the standing of retro favorite Grease, it's this one.
Okay.
I see you nod cautiously. Heather Huntington from ReelsChannel.com finally starts talking about the man of the hour and says, I will confess that Travolta totally turned me around. A mountain of a woman in his female fatsuit, he commits 150% to the role.
That's fair.
Prairie Miller from Newsblaze says Travolta as bosomy mom Edna in perky fatsuit with flab-infatuated spouse Walken, never far behind, pretty much steals the show from everybody else as he impressively shakes his bountiful booty across the dance floor.
That was too much.
Come on, Prairie. John G. Puccio from Movie Metropolis says, how can you not like a movie in which John Travolta and Christopher Walken sing a love song to each other? And you believe it.
This is fair.
Mike Sage from Peterborough This Week says, unlike Eddie Murphy's exploitatively unfunny attempts at fat and female, John Travolta makes his character absolutely endearing and charming by playing it relatively low-key. An uncalled for jab at Eddie Murphy.
I like how they worked it in, though.
And finally, Kyle Smith from KyleSmithOnline.com says, fellas, there are going to be a lot of little hotties at this movie. Here's an ideal place to catch them off duty, their hair up in scrunchies. No, it won't turn you gay.
All right.
The hell, Kyle Smith? What's going on with you? But yeah, there's obviously their quotes range from praising Travolta to praising Nikki Blonsky to praising different aspects. But I try to focus on the Travolta one since it is the summer of Travolta.
Very fair.
Yeah. All right. So let's head into Contrarians Corner, #CC, which is the part of the show where we just rage against the Rotten Tomatoes score. In this case, it's 91%, so it's fresh, which means that we're going to rage against the positive reviews and actually talk about this as if it was a bad movie. If you want to know how we really feel about it, just wait for the second half of the show, which is Real Talk. Take us away, Alex Mattis.
There we go. The year is 1962. Segregation is in full effect, as the first thing we see in the movie is a newspaper explaining that black people are barred from certain events. The movie begins us with a musical number called Good Morning Baltimore, which pretty much just paints the city of Baltimore as flashers and drunks. We do get an awesome cameo from John Waters. Outside of that, people that miss the school bus apparently have to take a garbage truck to get to school.
But this is the Baltimore of... This is a whimsical Baltimore. I mean, this is not the Baltimore of The Wire or even Serial, right? I mean, it just looked like such a good time, even among the flashers and the rats and even the racism, which I think it's a little responsible to paint this kind of stuff in such a lighthearted manner.
Our main character is the previously mentioned Nikki Blonsky. She portrays Tracy Turnblatt. She is our main character. She's a big girl with big hair. She does have her best friend, Penny, who is played by Amanda Bynes, which I think this is the last time we really saw Amanda Bynes in any sort of...
it's easy to forget ECA, but don't forget ECA. Did you watch ECA? The one...
I did. I liked ECA. She's the bad guy in ECA.
Right, she's the hardcore religious, which is funny. I mean, it would be... it's almost as if in that movie she becomes her mother's daughter, her mother being Allison Janney in this movie.
Allison Janney, who has fucking top billing, but is only in the movie for 4 minutes.
And 3 of those minutes she's not speaking, she's just reacting in horror at all the debauchery around her.
Just wildly racist. Just throwing her hands up anytime she sees anyone of color.
Well, she's a great actress. She needs 3 minutes tops to tell you how racist she is, and then...
Well, she's been on the podcast before for Juno, so we know what to expect when we get Allison Janney.
Right.
But Tracy and Penny, their obsession is the Corny Collins show, which comes on every day at 4 after school, which the incomparable James Marsden, has James Marsden been on the podcast yet?
I don't think so. He's always in our hearts, but I think this is the first time that we've seen him in an actual movie that we've covered.
But it helps to set the tone of the movie, because they talk about the nice white kids that dance on that show, and then once a month they have their Negro Day, as they say in the film, which, again, segregation's in full effect here, but it becomes clear off the bat that change is desired.
I love James Marsden, but I did find it off-putting just how I just kept thinking, who does he think he is? he's out there on the big TV dancing, and just basically he's like the king of racial purity. And the movie tries to give him an arc where he eventually becomes this personality that embraces segregation, or rather that embraces inclusion. Right? By the end of the movie, he's using his power to merge the black dancers with the white dancers. But I think that through the entire movie, he's just a businessman. He's a celebrity, a personality. So he's just doing whatever is popular at the time. So right now we see him and he's hanging out with the white kids. But then when it becomes profitable to him, he'll just hang out with the black kids. and Queen Latifah.
Well, as our previous Contrarians guest Eddie and I have proven definitively, is that by the standard of Nicholas Sparks movies, the only thing that can disrupt love is Acts of God and James Marsden. I believe that the only things that can solve racism are time and James Marsden.
What you're saying is James Marsden needs to run for office.
I'm saying that he is a greater being than he knows. We need him for more than he serves currently.
I think that's why he was written out of the X-Men franchise. It was just he was wasting his talent. No time to play superhero.
He was overshadowing Hugh Jackman. They were like, all right, we're not going to be able to make this guy a thing unless if you're here. You need to get the fuck out of here right away. We meet the man of the hour who is too sweet to be sour. John Travolta is Edna Turnblatt. He is in drag. He is owning this role as Edna. And he's married to Christopher Walken, of all people, who plays Wilbur Turnblatt. This is just like... you can't believe what's happening in front
so
of your
many
eyes.
wires crossed. Just, I mean, if you watch the movie out of context, just on its own, yeah, sure, it's pretty impressive. But then the fact that we're just coming out of Pulp Fiction, which was Travolta's rebirth, but also had that standout scene with Christopher Walken delivering that monologue, and now suddenly it's just that guy married to the female version of Vincent Vega, in a way. And this is, I mean, it's Travolta in drag, but he's playing a woman. And that's really...
Yes.
I mean, I love Travolta, and I know that, his talent is unparalleled, but couldn't they cast a woman? It's a little, like, just greedy of him.
Very easily.
Yeah.
It is a very... It's a gimmick. It's a thing to rest your shoulder on. It's a Nutty Professor type situation.
Right, but it's like, even Nutty Professor, I understood that Eddie Murphy needed the comeback. This is Travolta post-comeback. He can do whatever he wants. So what does he do? He takes a role from a woman that would probably need it more than he did this. This is just him fucking around in a fat suit. But there were women out there that could have just gotten their big break by playing Nikki Blanke's mom here.
That being said, we still do have Christopher Walken as Wilbur Turnblad, but, Christopher Walken is one of the most dry... he's not a comedy guy, but what do they use him for is the guy who runs a practical joke shop. It's like they don't know who the fuck they're casting.
Did you get the feeling that he was just constantly amused by everything that was happening, but not because he was acting, but just more or less in like he never read the script, so every new development he was just like,
I believe that he's that good that he just kind of he improv'd everything he said and it still
I mean,
worked.
it's not like he says much, right? He walks in, he acts amused, he says things that, like John Travolta early on here, he sets him up, tells him, you need to discourage Tracy from auditioning for the Corny Collins show. And then Christopher Walken goes and does the exact opposite. And he's like, you should follow your dreams. It's almost like he wandered off from a different movie.
Christopher Walken's scene with Michelle Pfeiffer in the comedy shop later on, that it's verbatim their scene from Batman Returns.
Yeah, just...
It's the exact same dialogue, just delivered with different, emphasis.
Yeah, I mean, they've aged a little bit, so of course, when you add age to anything, it all changes drastically.
Michelle Pfeiffer. We'll get to that in real talk. But my God. But speaking of Michelle Pfeiffer, our two main female antagonists, Michelle Pfeiffer plays Velma Von Tussle. Her daughter, played by Brittany Snow, Amber Von Tussle. Velma runs the local television station, which is WYZT. She controls the Corny Collins show, as we mentioned earlier. The star of the Corny Collins show, of course, outside of Corny Collins, is Link, who's played by Zac Efron, who at this point in time...
he was expanding...
He would have been coming off...
Yeah, I think he was expanding his range from playing a teenage heartthrob in
from just a Disney
High
guy.
School Musical to playing a teenage heartthrob in Hairspray.
Velma Von Tussle, Catwoman, wants her daughter to be featured most of all, who is played by Brittany Snow, who... This was one of the bigger roles that Brittany Snow had at the time, and definitely, I mean, it fit. People wanted to make Brittany Snow happen. Michelle Pfeiffer wanted to make Brittany Snow happen. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out.
Yeah, but also, it's very easy to fall into that narrative where oh, she's evil because she doesn't want black people in the show, and she doesn't want Tracy in the show, and because she wants her daughter to be featured more, and blah blah blah. But really, when you look at the way the show is run, when you look at the big picture in the movie, she is probably the most qualified person to make those decisions, right? She actually
Yes.
she has a resume that supports her position there. I don't know. There's not a single musical number that tells you what James Marsden's qualifications are to pick who dances, who doesn't dance, and whatever. But Michelle Pfeiffer was Miss Krabby Crab or something. Miss, she has a title.
She was the. I have it here somewhere. She was the original
Catwoman.
teen. She was the original Catwoman. She was the original Team Hairspray or Teenage Hairspray.
Well, there you
excuse
go.
me. And the movie goes out of its way to slut shame her for all of that.
but really, she is. She's really the businesswoman there. She is the brains of the operation, and but the movie not only decides to do away with a potential role that could be filled by a female, when they cast Travolta as Edna, but then they cast Michelle Pfeiffer and then paint her as a villain when really she's just an accomplished professional.
At the same time, her character is horribly racist and sizist.
But it was the '60s.
Fair enough. But she is pushing her daughter to probably be something she doesn't want to be. At the same time, she's Catwoman, so who cares?
I think that's how you develop character for your children. You push them until they push back. And that's when they realize who they are.
It puts them into their place. Our main character, Nikki Blonsky, Tracy, learns pretty quickly that due to the time period, a lot of the black kids are put into detention.
Dude.
The children of color, things of that nature. She finds out that all of the good dance moves and all of the good rhythm are hidden
Okay,
in
so how
detention.
racist was that? That's not the '60s. That's the movie being racist.
That is. It's them pointing out something that they don't really need to. I understand it was that way at that point in time, but, I understand we need consistent reminders of situations like that, but it was one of those things where she opens the classroom door to detention, and it's just all black children, and that's...
It's black children, but also it's just black children grinding against each other. It's like that scene in the Matrix Reloaded when they go to the orgy in Zion. It's debauchery again. It's crazy, and then she just
a horribly painted picture. I appreciate what it does to go to the lengths in terms of making us aware of what things were at that time, but by the same token, a bit much.
And then she so she goes in to dance with them, and then we get the first instance of many of cultural appropriation, where
oh, dude, she again, like I said, with Pulp Fiction, one of the only things a white man was ever cool at was John Travolta's dancing in that movie. Very rare a white person ever looks cool dancing, and just right away in this movie, we're just stealing things. Right away, anything we can to make a white person look cool, we're just going to steal it.
Yeah, she. It's really awkward to see her just basically dancing the way that they do, and then kind of like owning it. She tries to kind of give him credit, but at the same time, you can tell that she's just more of, this is Whitey taking over. Before long, she starts bringing Penny over to detention, and the gentrification starts of the whole detention classroom.
Queen Latifah even brings up at one point, we get one more white person,
Yep.
It's going to be a suburb. It is. This whole movie is a tale of cultural appropriation. But for some reason, Link, Zac Efron's character, is just hanging out around the bathroom and comes around the corner and sees Nikki Blonsky
Bending over.
Dancing. Yeah, rather provocatively. My notes say Efron
I wrote
wants that
Efron
ass.
clearly an ass man.
Well, God bless him. I'm the same way. But Tracy has very low self-value. She, as soon as he pays any attention to her, she just thinks that, she values herself so little. She begins the song "I Can Hear the Bells." It's this type of thing of the first guy that pays attention to her, she's
Yeah,
over the moon about.
she's
And
also this stereotype of a protagonist that we've had before on the show. This sort of a dreamer that has zero actual contact with reality, completely disassociated, and yet everything works out for them against all odds. It's just that story of, oh well, no matter, just follow your dreams and everything's gonna come out okay. We saw it in That Thing You Do, and we've seen it in, like, Empire Records. It's not realistic. It sends a negative, poisonous message to young people everywhere. And here it is again.
yeah, and again, I don't understand why. I think she's fucking gorgeous, but as soon as her Prince Charming pays attention to her, she thinks marriage, kids, all that's coming up next. Not exactly the way the world works, but that's what she thinks is coming to her. A dancer drops out on the Courtney Collins show and leaves the door open for a new dancer. Obviously, Tracy wants that spot. Things are a lot different back then. We don't have open casting calls. She goes to a Courtney Collins dance rally, and this is where cultural appropriation takes hold. Because Seaweed, one of our main black characters, explains that, I can't dance that way, otherwise it'll create problems. So he lends his dance to Tracy. Through this, Cyclops is very enamored.
He's such a dork. Again, this movie is lucky that they cast James Marsden, and at the same time, the downside to that is that we just keep seeing James Marsden be wasted in all these really dorky sequences where he's dancing with a big smile. And I don't know, hashtag not my Cyclops. He has better things to do than be in this movie. But yeah, the stolen dance works, I guess. Well, first she completely underwhelms Michelle Pfeiffer, but then because she's a woman and Marsden is a man, Marsden completely overturns her decision not to cast Tracy, and then gets her on the show anyway.
And immediately she's on television. This is the other thing that happens right here, is there's not even like a day delay. They just cast her during lunch period, and she's on television by the end of the day, because Amanda Bynes runs back to Travolta and Christopher Walken and says, "Hey, let's turn on the TV." And the daughter is on TV. Nikki Blonsky is right there.
With blonde bangs.
Approximately 2.5 hours after her audition, they've already rewritten the opening song, the television program, the production, all of it. The one plus of this, we do have the only shot in my knowledge of television history, film history, where Amanda Bynes, John Travolta, and Christopher Walken are all dancing in one take. God bless.
Well, every movie, no matter how bad, has a silver lining. So I hadn't even thought about that. I just kept thinking that Amanda Bynes, she would grow up to be Bruce Willis's girlfriend in Pulp Fiction, because she is not the brightest, and as much as her mom shelters her in this movie, it wouldn't surprise me that she ends up hooking up with a criminal boxer.
James Marsden, through his acts of recording at the campus there and also incorporating different elements of the African American community, he, in an attempt, tries to solve racism. He tries to integrate. He wants to make his show integrated, which, again, speaking to his point, I'm all for it. This is unfortunately where we have the Michelle Pfeiffer character being horribly, horribly racist and trying to shut that down.
But I think that, everybody here is a 60s person, right? And this movie is set in the 60s, so everybody's in the 60s. And there's some people that may be ahead of the curve, but not necessarily because they're thinking it through, right? Tracy's all about, she says, "I wish every day was Negro Day." But to her, it's just because she likes how they dance. She hasn't really put a lot of thought in the socio-political aspect of it, right? Marsden, like I said, yeah, he wants to integrate, but to me, I think it's just because it's good television. Even like further down the line in the movie, he tells Michelle Pfeiffer, "This is where things are going, so we might as well go," right? So nobody demonizes him, though, for being either too naive about it or just too opportunistic about it. Michelle Pfeiffer, she's just a woman over time, a successful woman over time, and the movie demonizes her for it. So I think, I'm not saying it's okay to be racist, but I think it's understandable for a woman to be racist in the 60s in her position. And it's not like anybody's actually like sitting down with her and having a nice talk. Everybody's just very antagonistic towards her. So
That's fair.
I don't think she's a true villain here. But yet the movie paints her out to be.
She's horribly racist, but yes.
She's horribly racist, but she's a product of the times, and the movie doesn't acknowledge that.
We get a musical number set to the new girl in town. We do get a clip here of Christopher Walken, Wilbur. He's basically overexposing his daughter. He's using her face on every piece of merchandise he can get his hands on to sell for money.
Now that is reprehensible. I mean, as soon as his daughter gets a little bit of popularity, he starts just exploiting her likeness.
All for naught, though, because we do get Jerry fucking Stiller in the next scene. Jerry Stiller, reprising his role from the first Hairspray, calls to arrange an agreement with Tracy Turnblatt in terms of plus-size dresses. Here, your thoughts on Jerry Stiller, Julio?
He doesn't even sing. Why would you cast George Costanza's dad if you're not going to have him neither sing or get angry? This could have been like anybody. It could have been just some random dude running the store. But it's stunt casting of the worst kind. It's distracting. If you're gonna do that, then either cast somebody that would bring something to the role just physically, which Jerry Stiller doesn't do here, because Jerry Stiller's shtick is not like, oh, I'm physical, you just see me and it's funny. Cast like Andrew the Giant or something, and then they would be like, oh, that's some casting kind of makes sense. But if it's just, he just shows up to deliver dialogue that anybody else could have done, and then he's gone. I'll tell you the one thing that I like, and it's not Jerry, I was going to say Jerry Seinfeld, Jerry Stiller. It's the fact that everybody in his store is black. He might be the most progressive person in this movie, but again, the movie's not interested in focusing on him.
Far more concerning is the narrative about John Travolta, where his character, which is Edna Turnblatt, is this very frightening hermit that hasn't left the house in over a decade, almost 2 decades. It's completely ignored, and she's just kind of pressured to leave. But that narrative is very concerning and very disturbing, that she hasn't been able to muster up the courage to leave the house in over 10 years.
Yeah, but nobody really takes it seriously. I mean, Tracy grabs her by the hand and says, "Mom, welcome to the 60s," and then just shoves her out into the Baltimore of the flashers and the rats and racial strife. That's it's all.
And Eddie, Jerry Stiller just gets her equipped in all sorts of lingerie.
That's right, because she becomes Tracy's agent. Completely unqualified, but it doesn't matter.
Back at school, Link and Tracy are starting to kind of hit it off. They link up. Link is intentionally sent to detention to spend more time with Tracy. As soon as he gets there, though, we realize how just impalpably white Zac Efron is. He doesn't really get the whole rigmarole of it all. He doesn't get the dancing, and that's because he's white. He doesn't have soul. That's how it goes. Well,
yeah, it's probably the one true honest moment in the movie. The one aspect of the movie is how uncomfortable Zac Efron is around black people. He has all these black kids being really cool, and first he tries to be as cool as them, fails, and then they say, "Hey, come hang out with us back home." And he's like, "Is it safe?" And then there's a whole musical number where everybody's into it except for Zac Efron, who's just kind of hanging back and looking really uncomfortable.
There's a part of the movie where it tries to paint the narrative question of, are black people better dancers than white people? There's a categorically correct answer to that question, and I can tell you that yes, they are.
It didn't even need to be asked.
No,
we all knew. I think even in the 60s they knew.
But they're way more forgiving and tolerant than white people are, so of course they welcome in Tracy and Link, and they try to adopt themselves to dance. They try to adopt the dancing, the culture, everything that we've mentioned previously. Basically, they're trying to welcome them, give them some soul, give them some flavor.
Yeah, this is really, I guess, when we get to the meat of what I have issues with in this movie. And that is that, really, if this is the story of how the black community triumphed over segregation and all this stuff, it's a story about black people, and yet we're seeing it through white people's eyes. So which is why I think the movie keeps failing at portraying racism accurately and at condemning the right people. As I was watching it, it reminded me, it's like those people that they think they're not racist because they like the movie Black Panther. I mean, it's like, oh, we like how black people dance, so we're on the right side of history here. That's it. It's just, I think that a true movie, a brave movie, would have been entirely from the point of view of the black kids and Queen Latifah. But here instead, they put Cyclops and Travolta and Walken and just overload you with whiteness.
The Amanda Bynes show, it's all there. Travolta storms in to try to cut his daughter off from causing any sort of ruckus, and again, they're enabling Travolta here, the far more horrifying scenario of people not giving her the attention to the proper places that she needs. They just offer her a buffet, and she throws in the towel.
That was pretty easy. That didn't take long. It's just they show her cupcakes, and then she goes down. And then it's just also, there's this whole thing, because Queen Latifah has a song, right? And it's just basically all her kids, all these black kids, and her performing for Travolta and Tracy and Penny and Zac Efron. It just made me a little uncomfortable to just basically see the white folk sitting back and just being entertained by basically black people performing. It just felt a little icky, considering that it's where the movie is heading.
Where it's heading is a repeat of Batman Returns, because we get Michelle Pfeiffer trying to entice and lure in Christopher Walken once again. The shoes are on a bit of an opposite foot here, as in Batman Returns. Obviously, Christopher Walken's a bit gross, a bit rapey, as we say, and Michelle Pfeiffer's a bit innocent in that. Here, in one of the more daring parts of the film, they switch the narrative. Michelle Pfeiffer is there trying to seduce Christopher Walken.
She tries. I don't think that it ever gets too far. It's one of the weakest.
I completely buy this as a real scenario, also in the sense of you're not really going to seduce Christopher Walken.
Right.
He'll be there if he wants to be there.
He's already there, and that's probably as far as you're going to get. He's interested in playing with the toys at the joke store, but not really interested in playing with Michelle Pfeiffer. But this leads to one of the biggest plot developments I thought in the movie, which is that after establishing through several minutes and even a whole song, actually, that Michelle Pfeiffer just can't get Christopher Walken to be interested in having sex with her at all. Yet somehow Travolta walks in on them. And one, Travolta buys that Michelle Pfeiffer is actually about to have sex with him, which it looks super fake. Uh-huh. Two, Christopher Walken can't find the words to explain what's going on, like at all. And then three, Michelle Pfeiffer gets away with it, even though she's a terrible actress in that moment, where she's just like, "Oh no, please, we can't do this," and then walks away. It's,
oh no, your wife.
Yeah. And it's just so contrived, and I don't know. I think that when you're making a movie that deals with such serious issues as racism, you have to be top notch on every moment. You can't just half-ass it in certain parts of the plot.
Agreed. For this, Travolta leaves Walken temporarily, and Link leaves Tracy. The reason for this, obviously, Travolta leaves Christopher Walken due to his infidelity or perceived infidelity. Link leaves Tracy because of her ties to the African American community. He is a dirty white person that realizes he can't have any ties to that. It's a very gross reason to leave somebody.
Yes, but the movie doesn't really do much. Like very quickly, they pivot from him being like, "Hey, I don't really want to hang out with black people," to him accidentally saying something that offends her because she thinks that he's talking about her weight. Right? He says something like, "This is too big for me," or something, and then she takes offense. It's almost as dumb as the fight between Travolta and Christopher Walken, only on a teenage level. But then
that's completely unfounded. It's just that's not really what's happening.
Yeah,
Calm
it's like
down.
Tracy. He likes you. He was all about you from the moment that he saw you dancing.
He risks his career for you.
Yeah, he just doesn't like black people as much as you do.
We do get a Christopher Walken Travolta dance and song number where they weave in and out of clotheslines and shadows and mists. If you've never seen Christopher Walken in a dance number, it's certainly something special.
I mean, it's and I know I've said this before in other episodes. There are some things that you just can't fuck up, right? So, the death of Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a terrible movie, but even that, you just can't ruin it. It's just too good. Dance number involving Christopher Walken, you can't ruin that. Even as out of it as Walken is in this movie, he still manages to just kind of like charm you through this thing. But that said, what I was thinking when I saw that dance number was, okay, so you've made up your mind to cast Travolta in this role. Why would you handicap him with a fat suit? Because Walken is limber and he's on it, but Travolta is just clunky. And we know that he can dance because we've seen him. I mean, we saw him in Pulp Fiction just a couple of weeks ago.
Him being in this movie it's the gimmick the movie's based upon, but they do very little with it.
Right, because what else can they do? I mean, the fat suit technology has only come this far. So, other than just CGIing an entire body that's more flexible than what he can physically do here, they knew going in that they were going to be very limited with how much choreography they could put on him.
So Tracy arranges a Black Power march because, again, we have to have the white character be the savior in this film. So what she does is convinces Queen Latifah to do a Black Power march, which, given the circumstances of the movie and the disclusion of people of color, it's definitely the right way to go. But the approach to it is definitely problematic in that, this little white girl has to be the voice of reason.
It's like when Marty McFly invents jazz or rock and roll in Back to the Future. Just
almost identical.
Pretty much, minus the time travel.
Biggest difference being here that Tracy gets away with assaulting a police officer. And typically that it doesn't work the same way.
Oh, no. I think that anybody living in the United States in the past few years, they can just point at any headlines.
And then, of course, Amanda Bynes helps harbor a fugitive. She takes Tracy into hiding and just allows her to get away from law enforcement. I mean, to her credit, John Travolta's character, Edna, hides her daughter after this assault on a police officer, but the whole thing is not a good situation.
Yeah, well, the 60s were a complicated time, and if anything, I think that this movie paints them, again, a little too lighthearted. It's really, as far as we can tell, there's not a single casualty in that march, even after the cops show up, right? Like, the worst thing that happens is that Tracy hits that cop with a sign, and then she runs away, and then that's it. Later, when you see Travolta at home, Travolta doesn't have any bruises. It doesn't have... It's almost like he just came back from shopping, not from a march that turned violent.
He came back from the set of Grease, pretty much. So then we launch into literally the last act of the film, which is Miss Teenage Hairspray. It's a musical number that goes on for nearly 40 minutes.
It's almost...
And I was thinking about it while I was taking my notes for this. What other musicals have we done? We did Rent.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors. A Chorus Line.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But still, the last 40 minutes of the movie is not occupied by one singular musical number.
Right. Those movies, for all their flaws, they knew when to stop.
Well, this one doesn't know when to stop, and we don't know when to stop the beat. We can't stop the beat. This is all the act of Velma, like we mentioned in the beginning. She wants to sabotage all of this. Her main interest is making Brittany Snow, the Amber Von Tussle character, the main focus of the Corny Collins show. So every year she's made an effort to sabotage these votes so that her daughter wins. This time she can't do so much.
Well, yeah, it's there's like a really convoluted plan to let Tracy into the studio because, right, she can't go in. She's being hunted by the police. So then there's it. Dude, I don't even know how to explain it. They have Christopher Walken in drag, pretending to be her to distract the cops, right?
I don't know how they buy that for a second. It's just Christopher Walken in a fucking Little Debbie wig.
Right. But it's pointless because they go up to him, and then he's like, haha, it's me, it's Christopher Walken. And then,
it's me. You can put your clothes in me.
Yeah. And then they go, and then they grab. They locked themselves out, I think, right? They were locked out, so they grab a big hairspray.
Well, no, it's all part of the plan. The people inside, as soon as like the first sequence is initiated, they make sure that all the doors, they put chairs in the doors to lock them.
Right, but Tracy's still not inside. They just think
Correct.
that she's inside. So in order to break in, the cops grab a big, giant tube of hairspray that's part of the set, right? And then they use that tube to break the door open, not realizing that Tracy's inside that tube.
Exactly, because it's all worth it for Michelle Pfeiffer to say, "Oh God, you let her in."
Right, but while they're doing this, I think it's Penny, Amanda Bynes, opens the back door and lets Christopher Walken in, which to me seems like a much easier way of getting into the studio than hiding inside a hollow tube and letting the cops grab you and ram you against the door. The entire thing seemed just way too complicated for something that's as easy as just go through the back door.
I really wish I knew what my notes meant at this point, because I have in all caps, Marsden is a national treasure.
Is it because he's singing about Hairspray? He's literally singing about Hairspray at some point.
James Marsden is incredible in this movie. We may and will get to that later, but that's not what we're talking about at the time. But yes, it's literally a 25-minute musical segment there, the You Can't Stop the Beat.
Yeah, but the other thing that happens, I mean, obviously the main thing that happens is that Brittany Snow doesn't win. Instead, Tracy shows up, dances, then Link dances with her, and then
Zac Efron solves racism
right
here in this last scene.
It was as easy as inviting a cute little black girl onto the stage and dance with him, and then America sees the light, and then they vote. They call the station in just a massive outpouring of votes for this little girl.
If she's good enough for Zac Efron, she's good enough for me.
It's just precursor to American Idol, I guess. And then and then she wins. This little girl that really we didn't have any investment in. It's like she's had almost as much screen time as Allison Janney. Like I don't really know her. I just saw her in the background. So when she wins, I'm like, okay, I guess it's good because at least
she wasn't in Juno, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I mean it's everybody. James Marsden says it's okay, so I guess it's all cool. And then
that's fair. If James Marsden says it's okay, then you're good to go.
And then Amanda Bynes, her arc is basically once you go black, you never go back. She just makes out with the main black kid.
Seaweed.
With Seaweed, the black.
The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
Yes. That's pretty suggestive.
Yes, but again, Seaweed is fantastic in this, and Amanda Bynes' absolute admiration for him, I think, is one of the high points of this film.
But yeah, basically, everybody gets their comeuppance. Travolta gets Michelle Pfeiffer on camera, basically confessing her plan like a Bond villain, and then America was healed forever
by Travolta's dancing.
Yeah, okay. Then Travolta goes and dances, and it's just kind of once again going back to the limitations of the black suit. It's like his boobs and his butt are just like made of just solid stone. There's no jiggling, and it's kind of weird. You know, everybody else, they look like human dancers, and he just looks like a robot or something.
That was 4 hours of makeup every day, kind sir. But yeah, within the final act of the movie, Zac Efron solves racism, and John Travolta teaches us how to dance. So I mean, we all win.
Yeah, and it's just so condescending. I think that this whole thing where white people are just constantly the saviors in this third act, because then James Marsden, he invites Queen Latifah onto the stage, right? So Efron invites a little girl, Marsden invites Queen Latifah, and then of course Amanda Bynes kisses Seaweed. It's all like these white figures bestowing these gifts on black people. I wanted
just handing them off.
Yeah, I wanted the black characters to just take the stage. They just march for an entire day. Give them that moment. Don't have them on the sidelines waiting for white people to give them permission to come on and dance and take their places. So,
because in this day and age, you can't wait for that. It may never come, unfortunately.
Hey, MAGA.
Oh, good God. Fuck off. So, in the end, our main character, Tracy, has succeeded in that the movie closes with her and Zac Efron having an embracing kiss. She gets made up far more superior to anyone in the entire film. Dude, Nikki Blonsky in that final shot looks fantastic.
And Efron he's all over her. I was starting to squirm.
As someone he couldn't even entertain the thought of talking to her halfway through the movie, but now, he's absolutely attracted to her just because it's the right thing to do, or so he believes.
Our love will cure racism.
Our love will bring us together.
Yeah. Well, I am ready for real talk, Alex Mattis.
All right, let's move it along.
I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And when it all got done, I put a nightgown on, and I just smiled this big, cheesy smile. I became Edna. She just suddenly lived.
I was just amazed at how real he looked. He has hips and a butt, you know what I mean? And beautiful legs. I'm like, dang, I need to get me some of those.
Once we started shooting, I never saw John again. I only saw Edna.
And he's moving, and it was just a joy to see John Travolta dancing again.
John had to undergo 4 hours of makeup a day and was buried beneath all that rubber, and then do hours of dancing.
If you're dancing like Edna, you can forget all the masculine things. Legs can kick and heads can go back. It's just a state of mind.
He made Edna the most wonderful mom for Tracy.
She's very sweet. The word that's used for this Edna most often is lovable.
Wilbur!
All right, real talk for Hairspray. Fucking A, man. Most money John Waters ever made for something he did. I'm always fucking about John Waters getting some fucking cash. So that is absolutely fucking fantastic.
I haven't seen the original Hairspray. I'm guessing you have?
I have not, but I love John Waters. So fucking A, if he makes more money for something. Adam Shankman was the director of the 2007 remake. Let's see here. I know it made like a fucking stupid amount of money at the box office. Budget of $75 million, which is kind of impressive considering the talent involved. Box office of $203 million, so yeah, definitely made its run back. James Marsden is the beacon of light and hope in this film.
I was going to ask you, like, who was the MVP for you? Because as I was watching the movie, it kept changing. I think everybody's so good.
Oh no, it's a fucking absolutely fantastic movie. But James Marsden, man. What was I did write down? He had a couple lines that fucking killed me. When the one cast member has to go away because she's pregnant, and he says, "Hopeful to sign just as good of a dancer, but maybe not so freewheeling." And then also when Brittany Snow says, "You have to select a person, not a mountain," he said, "Always a charmer, Amber," and then like elbowed to her side. James Marsden is one of those guys that you and I could deliver the same line 1,000 times and it wouldn't be nearly as funny as when he does it. He just has that talent. Yeah, he was the highlight of this for me.
I think he's great, and he would be maybe my runner-up because I think eventually when the chips are down, I'm gonna go with Brittany Snow. I think Brittany Snow. I mean, I love Brittany Snow just in general, and I think she's kind of underrated because I guess it feels like her career never took off the way that it should have. But one thing that I've just learned to recognize is that she can take a punch. She can take abuse on screen. I don't know if you've noticed that. But here, like, she gets manhandled a lot, and she's always funny. There's a part even towards the end where I think even Marsden like hits her in the face. by accident, like when he's
he goes to
presenting
lean
or
back and just like kind of backhands her. Yeah.
right, and her facial expressions are just on the money. Not just when she gets hit, but also just her reactions at all the stuff that's going on. She has that character down to a T. And when Michelle Pfeiffer is doing her song, just Britney Snow is there as a backup, just to provide like a little just back and forth, but it's not her song, and yet I think that she steals it. So
who disliked this movie, Julio?
Well, we have a few green splotches. Cam Williams from Newsblaze. That's weird. Didn't we do a quote from Newsblaze in the positive ones? They say, a safe, self-congratulatory fantasy which revisits the civil rights era, not for a valuable history lesson, but for an escapist, syrupy sweet, sing-along trip down memory lane to an unrecognizable Hollywood utopia. Then Kevin N. LaForest from Montreal Film Journal says, mostly flat, but Amanda Bynes is Amanda Fine.
Oh,
what?
Wow.
Oh, Kevin. Peter Bradshaw from The Guardian says, Hairspray looks like it's sending up the straight heterosexual world, but it also resembles a big, brightly colored closet which declines to reveal its contents. What? And then Brian Orndorff says, upon further inspection, not only can I stop the beat, but I would like to turn this stopping of beats into a national movement. Do yourself a favor and just revisit the original Waters film. Your senses will thank you in the morning. Matthew Sorrento from Bright Lights Film Journal says, even if the new Hairspray seems a welcome return to camp for Travolta, his mock seriousness is as frozen as ever. And then finally, Stephen Himes from Film Snobs says, like your high school's production of Grease, a musical about sex with a chastity belt strapped to its waist. All these angry, joyless people. What's wrong with them, Alex Mattis?
And none of them ever once mentioned the fact that we got Catwoman and the Mayor of Gotham on screen again at the same time.
Or Vincent Vega and Christopher Walken finally sharing a tender kiss.
So Travolta would get your MVP of the film?
No. No, Britney Snow. What I was going to say is Travolta, I mean, we're going to talk about the Travolta factor just because it's the summer of Travolta. What do you feel like he transcends the gimmick? Because, it's the big gimmick of,
Oh, no, he is absolutely hemming up the gimmick.
But do you think it works?
It works. He embraces it and takes it full board, but it's not like a Jeffrey Tambor and Transparent type of thing where it's like, okay, this person's clearly going for something. It's clearly part of the gimmick of the film.
Right. You're supposed
not to take anything away from his performance.
Right, but you're supposed to basically recognize John Travolta. It's not like he's meant to disappear into that fat suit and make you believe that he's a woman.
Exactly.
I think he does fine. I think he's overshadowed by everybody else around him being just so charismatic. Also, the fact that he's playing a woman, I think, doesn't allow him to sing very well.
Yeah, they definitely overstacked the actors in this film. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, his dance number with Christopher Walken is really sweet, and the one moment of true emotion that I bought from him was when him and Tracy are having ice cream or something, and Michelle Pfeiffer and Britney Snow show up, and they're really catty to them, and they say something really mean, and then Travolta's face, as if you can see that his feelings are hurt. I bought it, even with all the prosthetics, so that's good. I
thought it was really cool to have Christopher Walken and Michelle Pfeiffer on the same screen at the same time. All that being filed to the side. Yeah, there's clearly just a very overwhelming amount of racism in this movie that's kind of a bitter pill to swallow.
Well, but now that we're in real talk, I mean, yes, she's evil. She is.
Yes.
There's no redeeming qualities to her, and I think that's great. Her song is just, as good as any Disney villain song. It's great.
That's true.
Nikki Blonsky, I mean, I've never seen her in anything again, but I thought that she was fantastic.
Yeah, she's excellent in this movie. She's a very, 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 very pretty girl. At the same time, to me, at least with her facial reactions and things like that, you could tell she's more of a stage presence than an acting, like a live action movie type thing.
Right, like if she was on actual Broadway doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which in most cases is harder to do than actual acting.
Yeah. I was really... I remember when I watched this in theaters and just being blown away. I was like, "Who?"
I do too. It was fucking 11 years ago.
I was just now because, unlike all our other episodes, we actually watched this separately, and I watched it with Kelly, my fiance, and she saw it in theaters as well, and she was singing along with the songs, and she was like, "Does this bother you?" I was like, "No, that's fine. And then she's like, "You have to say nasty things about the movie now, right?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, we have to be negative, but it's
facetiously,
right, in a fun way."
But yeah, dude, the closing montage of the movie, the closing sequence of the movie is like fucking 40 minutes long with the same song, but it's so fucking good.
It's just so much fun. I mean, it just goes through like a lot of beats. Every character gets their moment. The only person that I think got screwed here was Allison Janney. She doesn't get anything. I mean, she gets that moment where she calls Amanda Bynes the devil child. That might be the only laugh that she gets.
She was speaking for America with that. But,
is it?
No, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. It's a shame that Amanda Bynes really has kind of, I guess, retired from acting or something. I liked her in ECA, and I think she's great, too, in this one.
She is very good. She's very underrated, underutilized type of thing.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite musical number?
The Nicest Kids in Town.
Like the first time that you see the show, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's so good, dude.
Is that when they introduce themselves? When they go like, "Maureen, Doreen,"
and I'm Link. Yeah. Incredibly odd. My sister texted me a link to that opening musical track today. When I was prepping my notes for the podcast, and I said, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know. I've had that song stuck in my head all week." And I said, we're doing that podcast?" And she said, "No." So that was a very weird, clairvoyant moment.
Yeah. I watched it last night, so I've had the soundtrack stuck in my head since then.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be cranking that shit tomorrow.
Yeah.
But for this bonus episode with Hairspray, we have Phenomenon coming up shortly. Julio and I are recording this on a Wednesday night. Very early Thursday morning. We'll be recording Phenomenon on Monday morning.
Memorial Day.
Yeah. As far as plugs go and just general stories of what I'm doing, where I'm at, I have a lot of things I want to save for a more... alert recording of the podcast. Yeah, there's definitely been some things I've experienced I definitely want to relay in a fully cognizant
Where are you again?
Wichita Falls.
Wichita Falls. It's like...
Yeah.
No man's land.
I can't explain to you the lack of things going on here. But I do have a particular... amount of stories that I do want to relay in complete alertness and want to contribute to the overall message of the podcast.
All right.
One of which will be a plug on the future episode where I talk about the Charlie's Angels films by McG, because I did get to rewatch Charlie's Angels 2 in my hotel room, and that movie is just absolutely fantastic. And
I've never seen it.
I forgot that... Really?
Yeah, I've seen the first one.
I forgot that was Justin Theroux's name, the guy who was Jennifer Aniston's boyfriend.
Yes,
he's like in it? He's the bad guy. He's like one of the main bad guys in it. And yeah,
sign me up. I mean, all you have to say is McG, and then I'm there.
Unfortunately, I know this about you, Julio. So we'll catch up for Phenomenon as far as my travels and the multiple stories I have about being here.
All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts about Hairspray?
It's absolutely fantastic. It deserves every bit of its 91%. I didn't catch if it won any awards. But what they were kind of able to take and manipulate into a modern film, I think, is absolutely fantastic. It's really sad that it's only been 11 years since that's been released, and it's somehow more prevalent to today's society than it was then. That's the biggest bummer.
No shit. When they start marching, which to me had always been the one bit of the movie where it kind of drags, right? The introductions are like really, really awesome. Like they go pretty quickly. It's a lot of fun, and then they get to that down point where they're hanging out with Queen Latifah, and they march, and the movie slows down.
It's never a down point when you're hanging out with Queen Latifah.
Relative to everything else that's been happening.
I know,
right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But now I was watching, and it's the most. I mean, I guess it's always been the most poignant part of the movie, but now it just resonates even harder because it's like you have people marching everywhere in the United States these days. And it was just, dude. And I wonder what it's like to watch this movie if you're black, and just how that, because it really is a very white movie about racism. It has its heart in the right place, and I think that what it says is, very hopeful and optimistic. But
it's one of those things that it's a movie that tries to be fair to people of color, but at the same time, it makes no qualms about saying, at the same time, we want to be sympathetic to you, but we have no idea what the fuck you guys go through.
We know your good dancers. That we know for sure.
That's the thing about the movie that's true. It's like you have so many things that are great that we steal from you guys, but we still want to treat you like lesser thans. It's fucking horrible. It's disgusting, and it's one of those things that when I watch something like this and realize that still exists today, the fact that it existed fucking 60 years ago, I guess it would be, that's gross enough as it is. But the fact that things like this are still prevalent to society today are disgusting.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, that's us getting extraordinarily real right there. But
extra real talk.
Extra real talk. But yeah, it is one of those things. It's the fact that this is more applicable now, 10 years later, than it was then speaks to a very scary condition of our society.
Yeah, this is, I guess, kind of like to close it off. Did you hear about the new Watchmen series at HBO?
The what series?
Watchmen.
As in Rorschach and
yeah. Damon Lindelof, from Lost, Prometheus, The Leftovers. I think he's doing the pilot, and then they'll probably order it to series. I can't imagine they wouldn't, but there's look up his letter online where he talks about the project. It's really awesome, but he talks about how the original Watchmen was a product of its time, and it's the 80s, and it's talking about what was going on in the 80s. And when they're doing Watchmen now, he wants it to be a product of the time now. So he's talking about, we're not going to talk about Nixon and Vietnam or whatever, we're going to talk about Trump and North Korea and all this other stuff.
Yikes.
So, I know. I like him as a writer, as a showrunner. It'll be so different from the movie, which I know I like more than you do, but
hey, it's not bad. It's just, it is what it is type of thing.
It is Zack Snyder's masterpiece.
The opening credits of that movie are Zack Snyder's masterpiece. All right, so we're going to conclude this. This is going to wrap it up for Hairspray, our bonus episode. Our next one is Phenomenon. I'll be seeing you 4 days from now.
Yes, that is correct. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah. And it will be a gray area episode, Phenomenon, because it's exactly a 50%, and it's episode 60. So I think we need to figure out who's going to be defending it and who's going to be attacking it.
Why don't we both just create narratives, and then we can kind of take it from there? All right, so that will do it for this bonus episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. We'll catch you here shortly to continue the Summer of Travolta.
Oh, and thank you to the Festive Years for the opening and closing songs. And thank you to Hans-Ruth Gieser, who, by the way, he sent me a message saying, "Did you know? Just so you know, I do make logos for other people, so you don't have to say that." that I did your logo, but I might not do anybody else's.
He corrected
you? Yeah, he's like, no, I actually do logos for other people and comics as well. So just let them know that they can contact me. So I'll put his contact information on the show notes.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding. So, for listeners, I apologize for being so tired and disoriented. Julio has helped keep this entire fucking episode together, so thanks to Julio's very much. This is
I'm holding a carrot in front of the webcam.
Yeah, exactly. This is our first episode recording remotely, and for the most part, I think it's gone pretty well. We had a bit of struggle in connecting, but we did pretty good. We didn't have any massive delays or anything like that. We've been recording just fine.
You couldn't tell that I'm not wearing any pants, so I think...
No, exactly. Dude, I'm shoot naked from about the tits down. I've just got a collar on right now. I'm wearing a collar. That's all you're seeing. So we may need to do it like this from moving forward. But Julio in Austin, myself in Wichita Falls. Julio, I thank you for joining me.
You're welcome, Alex.
I got to report to the work in about 6 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go, buddy.
All right.
But thank you for joining us again here on the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. We're going to catch you next time for Phenomenon.
Let's go make this summer one that's full of memories. You won't regret it. I know a place outside of town. I think you'll really love it.